Good morning. This is the sermon for New Hope Presbyterian Church, Sunday, July 29th, 2012, and it's entitled, Not That Guy. And our scripture for today will be, the Old Testament lesson will be 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 15, and the New Testament lessons will be Ephesians 3, 14 through 21. Well, we're going to wind up our mini series here on the lives of the apostles, focusing on some of the apostles we don't always talk about. And today we're going to take a little bit of a shift, and we're going to talk about an apostle we feel we know everything about, and that is Judas Iscariot. I think most of us have closed the door on Judas. And we know him as the betrayer. That's all we need to know. But even biblical scholars whose job it is to study the Bible and know as much as they can, cannot seem to come to a consensus on exactly who this man is. Yes, we know him as the betrayer of Christ who turned him over to be crucified. But as far as Judas Iscariot, there are a lot of different camps on who he is and what the word Iscariot means. Last names were not extremely common at that time, and a lot of times that there was a Judas last name, it was a title of some kind. So it was Judas something. And they said Iscariot could mean something in relation to where he was born, the town of Kerioth, and it could mean man from Kerioth. It could also have something to do with the color of red, referring to the blood that is on Judas's hands regarding the death of Christ. It could mean have a reference to how he died, a reference to hanging. Or it could mean that he was part of a sect of Jewish people called the Scaris. And these were Jewish assassins who were ready and plotting to overthrow the Roman government. There's a good deal of scholars and also pastors, preachers, and Christians in general that subscribe to that theory. That he was one of these people who was waiting for their chance to overthrow the Roman government. And what better way to overthrow the Roman government is than to have the Messiah on your side. And they think that eventually when Judas started to see that Jesus was not who they thought the Messiah would not be this political figure that would overthrow the Roman government, he started to become disenchanted with Jesus and decided to turn him over. And that may be true. That may be true of Judas. And that makes me feel that Judas was more than just a betrayer. He was a man of convictions. He was a man of faith, maybe wrongly put, but he was still a man of faith. And he was trying to find how to live out that faith in the world. And maybe he didn't do it the right way, and maybe made some bad choices. But I think like many of us, he was on a faith journey. I think we lose the fact that Judas was human like us and made bad choices like us. Made bad choices even like his friends in the apostles. Peter made the choice of betrayal, but thankfully did not make the same choices Judas made after his betrayal that led to Judas's death, and Peter was given the chance to reconcile with Christ and to know forgiveness here on this earth. Judas was a lot like us. When I hear the name Judas Iscariot, I can't help but think of another person in history And that's Benedict Arnold. Here's another person we have labeled as traitor. Here is another person we have marked forever for betrayal. Yet most of us don't know, before his betrayal of trying to turn West Point over to the British Army, Benedict Arnold was one of the first to sign up with for the Revolutionary Army. He was a soldier in numerous battles in Ticonderoga and Saratoga, and in Saratoga he got injured so badly he could not continue to fight. And they put him in an administration role, and he started to see that he was getting passed over for different promotions and wasn't given certain responsibilities and this, that, and the other. And he too became disenfranchised with the cause he first signed up with. And that's what led to his betrayal. How many of us have been passed over for promotion or wasn't given a position we thought we earned and thought we were better qualified than those around us, whether it be a job or volunteer or whatever it might be? How many of us felt that same way and maybe acted on it? Benedict Arnold made a mistake, but yet was forever labeled a traitor. I want you to picture right now your high school yearbook. Picture the pages and pages of students on there. Think of your class. What were the labels you gave to some of your classmates? Jock, teacher's pet, class clown. Maybe you had those little awards in the back where they usually do it for the senior class. Most likely to succeed, most likely not to succeed, most likely to wind up in prison, best dressed, worst dressed, whatever it might be. What labels did others give you, or what labels did you give yourself? Preppy, outcast? Aren't we glad those labels most likely go away? In most cases, those labels fade with time. They don't stick with us. Yet, I think we do carry some labels. We do stamp some people, and those labels do not disappear as quickly. We can see that in the case of Judas and Benedict Arnold. How many of our neighbors, our friends, our co-workers have we stamped with the labels jerk, liar, gossip? How many labels have been stamped on us? Incompetent, loser, nice person, but not a leader. And we want to get rid of those labels, but yet we feel like we can't. Jesus did not keep a label on Judas. I believe that as we can see how Jesus treated Peter, he wanted to treat Judas the same way. As friend. As beloved. Those were the labels Jesus had always given Judas. Those were the labels when Judas looked at himself in the mirror and a reflection of a pond or whatever it might be. Those were the labels Jesus wanted Judas to see. But for one reason or another, Judas couldn't. We see throughout the Bible, whether it be Abraham, Moses, Jonah, great people of God can be labeled, can have bad labels. Abraham could be labeled liar. Jonah, deserter. Moses, disobedient. Yet God gave each one of those chances to redeem themselves. Yes, there were consequences for their actions. But God never wanted them to feel those labels were permanent. That his labels of beloved, chosen, called, those are the labels that are permanent. And we can see that no so more than in the story of David and Bathsheba. David could be labeled as hypocrite. But when we looked at him as king, we could see him as a false king, a liar, a schemer, a manipulator. And David could have held on to those labels. And those labels could have shaped the rest of David's reign as the king of Israel. But yet God sent Nathan to show David of his wrongs. Show David that his title, his label of anointed, is all that really mattered. And that's what David needs to choose at this moment. There'd be consequences for his action. The son that Bathsheba was pregnant with died. But yet by David choosing to see that label as God's anointed, he was able to go on and do great things. Let us choose God's labels for us. That's what Christ wants for us. Christ came to show us how we are truly labeled in the eyes of God. And that's what Paul repeated to the church in Ephesus. This was one of Paul's last letters. And Paul, more than anybody, could have let negative labels affect his life. Persecuted, violent, whatever you want to put on Paul, on Saul rather. But Paul chose not to let those labels define him. When he met Christ on that road to Damascus, he accepted Christ's label as evangelist, friend, and worker. And that's what he strived to be. And that's what he is telling the church in Ephesus to be. People in Ephesus are getting caught up in labels: uncircumcised, circumcised, Christian, Jew, whatever it might be. Paul is saying, let the label on your heart speak for who you are. That label is Christ. Then live as Christ lived, and love as Christ loved. And this letter was not just written with an eye to Ephesus, but an eye to the world, because Paul knew his time was running short. And he wrote it with more of a universal slant. So let us look at Judas today. What do we have stamped on his forehead? Let us look at ourselves. What do we have stamped on our foreheads? Let us look at others, and what do we have stamped on their foreheads? Is it what God has stamped on their foreheads? Is it the label that Christ came to show us, that Christ died and rose again so we could see we are God's children? Let us order our lives so that label shines forth in our lives more than anything, and let us help others peel off their labels. Let us peel off our labels for them, but let us also help others peel off labels other people might have given them, so they can let God's label of God's child, God's beloved, shine forth.